Welcome to Wander and Weave, where awakening meets embodiment. I am Brooke Buchanan, soul embodiment and energetic alignment guide, and someone who's wandered through the messy middle of life in search of meaning and truth. This is a space where realizations become real life shifts, where truth isn't just spoken, it's lived, where you don't just wake up, you come home to yourself fully. Each episode invites you into honest stories, soft perspective shifts, and sacred questions that help you remember who you are and live like it. Let's get into it. Today, I'm joined by Elijah Donnelly, a writer, storyteller, and creator of Learning at 30. We talk about what it really means to start over in adulthood, how faith and resilience can guide us through uncertain seasons, and why it's never too late to begin again. If you've ever felt behind or like you're rebuilding from scratch, this episode will remind you that your timing is right on time. Let's get into it. I am here with Elijah Donnelly, who's based in Idaho. Me and Elijah have connected on LinkedIn, and he has been sharing his journey. And I want to actually allow him to kind of introduce himself of where he's been and where he's at or where he's going right now. So, Elijah, if you don't mind taking over and introducing yourself a little more.
Of course. Thank you, Brooke, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. So a little bit about me. I am originally from Nashville, Tennessee. I've moved around a bit. I'm currently 30 years old, and what's unique about that, I think, is that I'm also a freshman in college. So I started out in college 10 years ago, but I dropped out to go to film school. And so I pursued film for about 10 years. And things just didn't quite work out with that. There was a writer's strike, and I had an unfortunate mishap with hail, which damaged my car, and it was a whole domino effect. And I was in this position, I was living in LA. I had no car, I had lost all my savings, and I had no real job. And I was working a dead end job that didn't pay very well. It was minimum wage, and it was just miserable.
Yeah.
And so decided to make a change, and I spent a while looking at what that change might look like and determined to go back to school and sort of start over, reset my reset my life in a way.
So, when you initially went to school and when you dropped out, what were you studying then? Or were you getting into the industry of writing and the film industry then?
I had always liked writing. I discovered I liked writing in high school and I thought I was kind of good at it, but I wasn't pursuing writing in college really. I was just taking general ed classes. I don't think I declared a major. And at the time, I remember I had this like political science class, and I really loved that. And so I thought maybe I would do something like law or something law adjacent, something in that realm. And I dropped out. Well, I guess I should say I did finish a semester. So
Okay.
I finished the semester, but during that time, I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do with my life. And so I took the time to just really focus on what I liked, what I was good at, and sort of stumbled into screenwriting as a potential career. Fell in love with it and realized that if that's what I really like to do, then my current college situation wasn't leading me towards that, and I should make a change. So I dropped out, but I did go to film school. It was a 9 month program. I got a certificate. Doesn't mean anything. I can't really use it on like a job thing, but I learned a lot. It led me to a career in film. I worked as like a production assistant, and I worked my way up from production assistant to like roles like assistant locations manager, assistant production coordinator, and then I worked in various other jobs in production, like in the camera department and the lighting department, and even the hair and makeup department at one point. So I did a
So
little
it
bit of
sounds like
everything.
I should have gotten notes from you first before I hit record on the lighting. That's what I
No,
should
you're good.
have
No, it
done.
looks great. I think, yeah,
But
you're doing great.
so I want to rewind of like going back to, you completed that first semester and like you say you dropped out, but yeah, you didn't. But like
Mhm,
how awesome that was for you to be what, 18 years old, 18, 19, like kind of
mhm.
starting out in that journey where most people would like put their head down and push through just because maybe their parents expect them to finish school, but you were like, hold on, like let me like take a step back and actually like
pursue something that I enjoy doing. Like that is not very common, and I want to highlight that in the work or what has led you to the work that you were doing for, the last decade or so, and just how awesome that is. Like, would you say that like you are take pride in that?
Thank you. Yeah, it is something that I think I subconsciously do. It's not at the forefront of my mind. Like when I'm making those decisions, I'm not telling myself, oh, I'm being different from the crowd in this moment. It's just, I'm aware that there is sort of a going against the grain a little bit. And when I told my parents, I was nervous because I wasn't sure what they would say. My mom at the time was an adjunct professor for a university.
Okay.
Um, so I didn't think she would accept that. But she had always taught me to think for myself she taught me how to think for myself.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was one of those moments where I felt like I was thinking for myself and trying to make the best decision that I could based on the information that I had.
Yeah.
And when I told her, she told me something that stuck with me, and just kudos to my mom because she said, if there's anyone who can do it, it's you. So that was really nice of her to support me in that way.
Well, and that she empowered you. I mean, that she was in this like an academia profession, but that she encourages her child, right, to like be an independent and not be expect you to follow a path that maybe that isn't her profession, or, expect you to get an education right away, that she trusts you to be an individual. And I think
Mhm.
that highlights the parents that how you were raised, is that you were encouraged, maybe a little nervous, to say, hey, like, let me step away from like the normal path and like let me
Mhm.
follow my own calling. I think
Mhm.
that's highlights at least a little reflection of how you were parented, which I can give snaps to your parents for that.
Yes, we'll snap to that.
Yeah. So with that certification then that you found yourself in, I know you said that like it wasn't like anything that would help get you a job, but would you say that it gave you a skill set or more knowledge about the industry of where you were going and wanting to go?
Definitely, 100%. The In a creative profession, it doesn't necessarily matter what you know. It's really about what can you do.
Yeah.
It's sort of like an quote unquote portfolio. And so while the jobs that I pursued at the time weren't based, they were all about how good of a worker are you? How reliable are you? And so my initial jobs, I learned those skills through film school. They taught me about showing up on time, being early, networking with people, doing a good job, things that are common sense, but may not be at the forefront of your mind when you're pursuing a career.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the skill sets that, like, I don't know, people are trained on certain things, but then there's certain skill sets that you can't really train. It's just kind of innately who you are too.
Hmm.
So I guess what would you say, like in the last decade, like what led you to where you're at now? Or do you feel like or like, I guess, where are you going? I don't know. This is kind of like a multi-tiered question. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I know. Let me like try to think about how I can reword that. I guess like in the last decade, what did you enjoy the most? I guess we'll go there.
Oh goodness, it's hard to I can't say what I enjoyed the most because there's so many things that I enjoyed. Um, Film as a career is fantastic for many ways. One of those that I really liked is the camaraderie the friendships that you make on set.
Yeah.
Because when you're working outside in the cold at night. You've been working for 14 hours and you have 2 more hours to go, and it's Friday, so there goes your weekend. And there's a lot of challenges that you face, and you face them together. It's a team building environment. And so if you don't have a good team, you're just not going to have a good time. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like too, it's like it doesn't always matter the days that you're working, because it sounds like it wasn't always a choice, but that
mhm,
you made the best of it despite, having to work 16 hours straight on a Friday where it's kind of going into your weekend, but like making the best of that situation too, and making sure that
yeah.
like that is your life. That was your Friday night sometimes, and that's
Mhm,
great.
yeah. And so I think everyone on set kind of knows that together. Like everyone's sort of missing out on something. And
Yeah.
so you really try to treat that team, that community, as well as a community.
Yeah. And so right now, as we know that you're going back to school, what are
Mhm.
you studying?
I just recently declared my major as marketing.
Okay.
Yeah,
And where do you think that it will take you?
that's a great question. I have no idea.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Mm, yeah.
We'll kind of rewind too of how we connected, right, on LinkedIn. We were both kind
Mhm.
of sharing our stories. I don't even remember like how we first really connected, but following your journey has just been incredible. And I'm curious, like, what inspired you to start sharing your journey more?
That's an interesting story. So I mentioned that I studied film. I studied film specifically because I wanted to be a screenwriter. And
Okay.
so during the last 10 years, while I was working on set, I'd come home at night and I'd work on my screenplays. And so storytelling has always been like a really big passion of mine. And when I decided to come back to school, I thought that was sort of the end of my storytelling journey. And it actually came to me in a dream, if I'm being honest. I like I don't know what the dream was, but I had this dream where there was like this voice telling me like you're a good storyteller. And I woke up and I was like, what? And that just like stuck with me. And it was just like a confirmation from the universe that like, oh, maybe I am a good storyteller. Screenwriting may not have worked out, but that doesn't mean that I'm not good at storytelling or that I'm not a bad uh, nor that I'm a bad screenwriter. And I just thought about how I could encapsulate or um, what's the word I'm looking for? How I could incorporate that
Yeah.
into the next phase of my life, which would be going back to school. And I just I'd never been on LinkedIn. I For whatever reason, I just had the idea of like, oh, I could just update it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Um, and so I like looked into it a little bit more. I did like a social media marketing course through like Coursera to give me at least like the bare bones of how to manage your social media account,
Hmm.
and just started from there.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
sounds like too, I mean, like you did a little bit of research, but it was also like you got to just show up and be yourself and share your own stories, which sometimes can be very scary or such a vulnerable thing. And to me, every
Mhm.
time you've shared things, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I understand this, or oh, I'm relating to this right now. And like you've shared some very open and vulnerable things about, checking your bank account and being like down to the last dollars. But then, sure enough, like a job opportunity opened up like that same day, or, just sure enough after you were offered a job. So it's like, what kind of leads you to feeling open and vulnerable, sharing those kinds of stories?
Yeah, anytime I share a story like that, there's a part of me that just really does not want to talk about that. But also I also feel like that is the story. Like if I retain that or dance around it or don't talk about it, I'm not really telling the story, what actually happened, and who wants to read that?
Yeah.
So I think when I approach a story that's sensitive to at least me and was a pain point in my life, I try to talk about what had happened, but I
Yeah.
do my best not to glorify it or like revel in it or dwell there. I try to look at it just as objectively as I can, and then anything else could be more subjective, but like the pain, the sadness, I don't try to
Yeah. So it sounds
glorify
like
that in any way.
you're sharing it from a healed place. Like this is stuff that has happened maybe, a year ago or a few years ago, or maybe even a few months, depending on the severity of like how it really impacted you. But
Hmm.
that you're never sharing like something that's you're going through that is like super painful, let's say, like at the moment, would you say?
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where like sharing on social media can be scary. I mean, I've shared some
Yeah.
stories where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to maybe delete this post because I've learned though too where there are certain things that it comes off like I'm sharing, maybe where it's like this raw or vulnerable or like stuck in the pain. And I'm like, that is not my intention. But there are a lot
Mm.
of people out there who were like, oh, I felt this too, or me too. So it is kind of like this fine line that seems to move back and forth. I don't know if that's what if you've noticed that along the lines of your journey of sharing your story.
Yeah, it's really hard to find what's appropriate and what's maybe oversharing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's where too I've learned there are people who overshare or maybe share some really vulnerable things that are from the
Mhm.
past, right? Like
Mm.
again, like that to me it's there's like no coincidences of like everything happens for a reason. Like
Mhm.
I could just keep thinking of that post, right, that you shared about, looking at the last few dollars in your bank account and then being offered this job. And I know that story might be a little that's like the general picture, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like so many people can panic and then be like, well, nothing's going to ever come about. But it's like, you're that living expander of realizing like not everything is in our control either.
Mhm.
That like things will happen as they're supposed to happen and it'll unfold in the time that it needs to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say it's so cool that you remember that story. I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
posted that like 2 or 3 months ago. So
Yeah.
it's a compliment to me that you remember. So thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, of course. Well, and I mean, it stood out because I've been there those times too,
Mm.
where it's like, oh my gosh, like, and there's that like humanness of we want to try to control everything, but we
Mhm.
realize that like nothing is really permanent. That has flowed through me today or channeled through me today. Like really nothing is permanent. Nothing lasts forever. Everything changes. That it's like you can be on your last dollar amounts or being late on your bills, but then like in a month it could be a totally different story. Like where we kind of almost think about what we're living in now, but we think of worst case scenario, but it's also like, okay, if I let go and release and be like, okay, what if this does work out? Or
Mhm.
what if this happens? Like we start thinking in like this dreamer state where some of us can
Mhm.
maybe get stuck there. I've been there, stuck there
Yeah,
too. But it's
sure.
also realizing like how can we trust a little bit more, fall back and allow the universe to catch us
Mhm.
rather or and also allow the universe to guide us or our higher selves, right, through your dream too, to like have something stick, being like, okay, how I'm not bad at storytelling, like this is a gift of mine, but how can I utilize it, maybe not in a career right now, but I get to practice and utilize this gift that I have with your personal story and personal life. Like I think that's I would love to learn more about like how your relationship is with the universe, or like what term. I know I heard you say
Yeah.
universe, so just curious about that.
Yeah, I am actually I'm hesitant to say deeply religious, but
Yeah.
faith is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm also mindful that not everyone feels the same way I do about God, and people have religious trauma. So I try to
Yeah.
not hide it, but I do try to, if I'm doing a podcast where I don't know who's listening, I
Yeah.
try to sort of generalize it so it's easier to swallow, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Well, I want to pause you and just say like this is also your
Sure.
story. This is like true to you. So any of the
Mhm.
listeners that are listening, like I remind you like to take what resonates and leave what doesn't. So this is Elijah's story and this is his relationship. And I want to at least make sure you feel comfortable of sharing, like what comes out for you and keep what doesn't, because I'm in that same boat of like I keep my relationship with God more intimate, like as if I were to have a partner in the relationship I have with them in the bedroom, that is intimate to me. So it's like
Yeah.
I don't feel that need to like broadcast it. And it kind of sounds like that's kind of where you're at too, where you're cautious of other people, but you also get that right to keep it intimate for you as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, you were talking about faith and your relationship with the universe or
Mhm.
with God, and just like how that has always been something that you can maybe trust fall back onto, or how that looks for your journey of where you've been.
Yeah. Oh goodness, that's a great question. I don't know where to begin. I would say that I feel like my faith is sort of ever evolving.
Mhm.
I think just like any person, as you know more about yourself, like different parts of yourself become revealed, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so we're never fully complete. We may learn something new or and master a certain skill about ourselves. But as we do that, we realize that maybe we can improve in some other area of our life. And not that we're faulty or that we're, imperfect or,
Yeah. We
that's,
are we are human, so
we are human.
we aren't perfect. If we're
Yeah.
perfect, we wouldn't be human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not trying to shame anyone, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
word it as. But I would say God has always been in my life for the most part. I came to know God at 13, when I was 13. And ever since then, he has been close to the forefront of my mind and involved in most of the important decisions of my life. Ironically, when I made the decision to drop out of school and pursue film, I I don't think I involved him as much as I should have. At the time, I was going through a breakup and just really hurt and angry, um, because, breakups are never fun for anyone.
No, never.
Um, and I had heard that there was a theory of thought that sometimes when you make decisions, you just have to say, okay, God, this is my decision. And if it's wrong, stop me. And so that's kind of the approach that I took in that moment. I said, okay, God, this is what I want to do. And if it's wrong, stop me. And I kept moving forward and I wasn't stopped. So I was like, okay, great. I'm going to keep going down this path. And I've had different confirmations along the way to continue along that path, until I lost my car, I lost my savings, all of that. And I had to really reconcile that with my decision to go back, to stay in film. That was a moment where I was like, okay, is this just a challenge I need to overcome? Or is this a sign that God's saying, hey, you've gone down this path long enough, time to go down another path?
How old were you, or like how long ago was that when that all happened? Like with your car, just that whole like tower moment of life, I would say.
Yeah, I would say it all kind of came crumbling down. It was 2023. It
Okay.
didn't come down all at once. So I moved to LA the beginning of July 2023.
Okay.
And so it was around the beginning of July where my car got totaled, but it wasn't until a month or two later where I had the time to take the car to a mechanic or to an auto body shop where they told me it was totaled. I got really lucky. When I moved to LA, I this is one of those moments where it felt like God was intervening in a good way. I immediately started working, um, without it wasn't until I was pulling into California where I get a phone call from a previous boss saying, "Hey, we have work for you this weekend." It's great. So I worked that weekend. My roommates had friends who worked in the industry who needed additional help. So I worked that weekend, like a day or two later, then I immediately started working on a feature film. That feature film wrapped. I immediately started working on another feature film with the same group. And so it was 2 or 3 months of just me working and not having the time to get my car, taken care of. But it was total. I just didn't realize it. I filed the insurance claim, and there was like a grace period where I could take it into the shop. And when I had the time, I brought it into the shop. I didn't realize it was going to be totaled. I just
Yeah.
thought, oh, you could just buff it out or whatever. Or honestly, at that point, I was like, you know what? LA is expensive. If it's gonna be super expensive to buff it out, fine, just leave the dents. That was kind of my attitude. Um, so I went with my car without it for a week, and that's when I found out. That's when they told me that, hey, it's totaled, and there's a clause in your contract that because it's totaled, you can't drive it anymore. So we're gonna detain it. So I said, okay. So I didn't have a car, and then because the insurance company, they were great to work with, but the dealership that I bought the car from just poorly managed. And it took because of them, there was paperwork that the insurance couldn't, in order to process my claim, they needed it from that dealership, and the dealership wouldn't communicate. So it took another year for that to fully resolve. Um, and
Oh,
during that time, I didn't have a car. I just watched my savings slowly dwindle away. And I was pretty confident. I was like, oh, everything's gonna work out. I'll get a car again. And I didn't.
yep.
Um,
It
It's really
sounds like
humbling me.
too, I don't know how familiar you are with astrology or what your relationship is too,
Mm.
but for you and for the listeners that aren't aware, as you were talking and I'm like, okay, you just turned 30, I know. So
Uh-huh.
it's just incredible. But having it be a couple years ago, typically around 28 years old is our first Saturn return, which is usually where like our life kind of shakes up. It's depending on where your Saturn is, like in your natal chart. Mine was like in the home world. So like I moved during my Saturn return. Like everything was going great until like it started crumbling down a little
Oh
bit.
no. Yeah.
So that's where it's like a lot of it's very common though around age 28 or 30, when it's like we have these like let's move, let's have we're like big dreaming, like all right, things are gonna happen, and then it's like, oh no, like this isn't aligned, like the universe is gonna kind of shuffle you up. And sometimes too, it's the matter of like, is this the right journey? And if it is, like, this is just a test to make sure you're staying on the track. Or it might be like, let me reconsider and let me step back and reflect and see where I really want to go. So it sounds like, too, you were kind of navigating like, okay, like life is hitting pretty hard, but like, is this
Yeah.
really what I want to? Like, it served
Mhm.
you for the time that you were in LA and the journey, but then it led you to where you're at today, which to me, it's like we wouldn't have connected if it weren't for all of that either.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think another reason why I'm here today talking with you is because in LA, I was pretty determined. I said, okay, you know what? I've done hard things. Like this is just another hard thing. Like I'll just push through it. And so I continued to write screenplays, and I would go to these different screenwriter meetups and just talk with them. And I learned from them that even they thought that the screenwriting industry was just kind of collapsing and crumbling. They It wasn't uncommon to hear about how there's a showrunner who has like 15, 20 years of experience who can't find work, and the amount of jobs that were available when I decided to pursue screenwriting had shrunk significantly. So now the pool of jobs had become a lot smaller, and it was competitive then, but now it's even hyper competitive because you have so many people with so much more experience
Yeah.
competing for such smaller roles. And I realized I was like, you know what? Like I can't. That's something I can't overcome. I can't gain 15 years of experience as a showrunner. I can't compete with that. I just know I can't.
Unless
And
you were to become the next generation, right? Like that's what comes to
yeah.
mind for me. But it sounds like too, your soul is leading you and God's leading you to develop a skill set that's going to apply you to maybe going back to screenwriting, or maybe you open up your own business. Like who knows, where your life takes you, but it's like you've gained the skill set where maybe you're not using it right now, but you are like in your own way. Maybe it's not screenwriting exactly, but you also get that practice and utilization the storytelling. But realizing too, like what comes to mind for me, like in when we're in a really competitive state, it's like, does that scare you? Or does it say like, no, actually, like maybe it's just not my time yet? And like, how can I be the next generation, but changing it too? Like to me, I see you as kind of like that the trailblazer, going the opposite way of like not, continuing your education in a normal college setting, but getting certified and go or getting a certification and going into film and going in that direction where it's kind of like you get to shake things up and follow what, where you're being led to.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way of saying it, shaking things up.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just adding to it. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think that's incredible. So,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. Of
Of course. I'm gonna ask a few questions if you don't mind.
course.
We're gonna kind of as we wrap things up. What's something you're learning about yourself lately?
Oh, that's a good question. I can answer this pretty confidently. In one of my classes, because I'm a freshman, there's like a required freshman course that everyone has to take.
Yeah.
There's a You can choose which specific one, but the one that I chose was career and self-discovery.
Ooh.
And they had us, I won't go super into it, but they had us write everything like that we've done, that we like to do, and what we didn't like to do. And then from that, we wrote what we liked about it or what we didn't like about it. And then the third step was to like find all of the similarities. And one thing that I learned about myself is that I really take a lot of satisfaction in like diligence. Like if I find a project and I'm like really diligent about it, I take a lot of satisfaction in that.
Yeah. I love that. That is such a great assignment too, because it gets you really thinking about like, yeah, what you like and don't like. And finding the
Mhm.
similarities was what made me lean in a little too, like, ooh, that's got to be challenging, but it
Yeah.
totally is. I love it.
Mhm.
What makes you feel grounded when life feels chaotic?
Great question again. Lately, for me, it's been going on walks. I've been going my walks, when I started to go on walks, it'd be like, oh, like a 20-minute walk. Now, I don't know if it's the serotonin or if the air is just fresher up here, but I'll go on like a 6-mile walk sometimes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
When you go for walks, do you listen to music, podcasts, or do you just be present with yourself?
Depends on the headspace and depends on the day.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll turn off all like electronics and just like let my thoughts just come in and as they go. And even when that happens, I'll usually get like an idea and for like maybe like a LinkedIn post or something else. Uh, Usually what happens is maybe something has bothered me in the day or like in the week, and I'll be able to sort of sort it through in my mind. So I'll pull up my notes app, put it on like the text to speech, and just like talk through it. I'm like, this is what happened. This is what I didn't like about it. This is what like was painful about it. And through that, I'll kind of figure out what I did to contribute to that. Maybe like what was out of my control. Like I'll really try to analyze like my thinking or my thought process and hopefully not make that same error that caused me the sadness again.
I know the voice to text too, because I'll do that at times, and it's such a great tool. Sometimes I'll even voice memo because then it'll
Mhm.
take the transcript.
Oh, that's a
Like,
great idea.
yeah, because there are sometimes too where it's like I like will notice the punctuation changing too much, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting too off track here of like Siri not following my instructions or hearing me out. But I think that's such a great way to channel these thoughts and like what comes to mind, and you're like, okay, as I'm walking in nature, like you know a time and a place of when to have the electronics handy, but also knowing your boundaries of like, okay, maybe I'm not in the place to have it. Let me turn it all off. I love, yeah,
Mhm.
that's incredible. What's something you wish more people appreciated about life?
Ooh, good question. I'll have to think about that. I would say maybe second chances. I think maybe it's just because I'm going back to school at 30, so this topic is sort of on my mind, but it's never really too late to start anything. We could at any time just change careers or paths, and it may be hard, and there may be sacrifices, and it may be a new lifestyle and way of living. And I'm not saying it's easy by any means, like it's incredibly hard, but we don't have to be stuck. Um, the, the mind just sort of makes us think that, and for many reasons, we don't have to be.
Yeah, well, it's like the mind likes to keep us in comfort, and
Hmm.
sometimes comfort means we're in a cage with the door open and we want to stay in it, but we're outgrowing what served us, and we're supposed to step out of the cage or, whatever the box, whatever it might be, to step into that growth and allow for second chances. And I like that you said that it's never too late to change, because it
Hmm.
really isn't, because we're all on our own journey, is right?
Hmm.
Like I think that is like something where I look to you and I'm like, wow, he really owns his journey, and it inspires me to start owning my own journey and sharing it. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
What pulled you into the work, or like into going back to school that you're doing? I don't know if we touched on that entirely.
What put me back into school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like
I
what led you to like where you're even going to school and like deciding to declare marketing as your major.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the school thing. So, I I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Okay.
That's my religion, and they own two or three different schools, and one of those schools is called Brigham Young University of Idaho,
Yeah.
and it's sort of a it was at the time. I don't believe this anymore, but at the time it was sort of the joke that that's where you go if you don't get accepted into BYU.
Okay.
Because I applied to BYU and I didn't get accepted.
Is that in
Um,
Utah, BYU?
that one is in Utah.
Okay, I was gonna say I know of that one, or
Hmm.
my travels to Utah, I've come across it.
Yeah, that one's the more sort of famous one, that or
Okay.
like famous, more well-known one.
Yeah.
And so I got accepted into BYU Idaho, and I was a little disappointed, but I remember thinking like at the time that it was the right decision, even though I didn't follow through. So when I was thinking, what do I do next with my life? I remember that just throughout the last 10 years, I had always felt a little ashamed or not, or maybe embarrassed that I didn't get my education and had always sort of wanted that
Hmm.
and had always wondered, like, well, maybe if I had just gotten my degree, things would have been different. And so it was sort of just an obvious choice that that's what I had to do, even though I resisted that choice for a year or two.
Yeah.
Um, And when I decided to go back to school, I was looking at different universities. BYU Idaho was just one of them. Because I was living in California at the time, I was looking at several in Los Angeles because I'd made such incredible friends there, and I didn't want to move away from them.
Yeah.
I had built a life, and I was really happy with that part of my life. And I was looking at uh, UCLA, not UVU, USC, and there's a few like community colleges in Los Angeles that were well recommended, but none of them felt right.
Mhm.
I can't explain it. It just felt like I should be at BYU Idaho.
Yeah.
And so that's why I chose to go back to BYU Idaho. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew it was the right one. And marketing, I'm not 100% sold on that's what I should do as a career. At the moment, it just feels like the of the career option or of the major options that are available right now, that one seems like the best fit. I'm not saying it's a perfect fit, but
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you'll graduate as, with a marketing degree. You might change midway through, which is
mhm,
like very common. Or you could be like me and you just add another degree onto it and then do a 5 years or whatever it might be.
that's impressive.
You never really know like where
Mhm.
it's gonna take you, but I think that's
Yeah.
incredible. So thank you for sharing that journey.
Yeah.
Last question is like, what
Mhm.
is something that you're excited that you're working on or here to offer the world and just give your gift?
Very cool. There's two things that I'm currently working on simultaneously, and they kind of go hand in hand with each other. And the first one is, well, they both are under the brand that I've created for myself called Learning at 30. Uh, the Learning at 30, which is how we met, started out on LinkedIn. I still post on LinkedIn. I'm still very active on LinkedIn, and I post sort of small snippets of what it's like to be a college freshman. And since posting on LinkedIn, I feel like the best way to sort of tell my story on a deeper level would be through like a newsletter. So
Mhm.
I started a newsletter called Learning at 30, and that's through, I think I'm using Beehive, or
Okay.
I am using Beehive. Um,
Yeah.
I don't remember like the URL for
Yeah.
that. But I post weekly and I try to go more in depth and make that one more story focused and more visceral. And that's if you really want to like get deep into like the
Yeah, really
deep
follow
into
your
the story.
journey along. And I'll
Yeah.
have you set your little tag in that, your newsletter in the show notes for the listeners who want to follow your journey along. And if you're open to it, if they would be, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the best way to connect with you?
Probably through LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
LinkedIn Learning at 30.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I love that you're branding yourself as that too, because it is such a like there we are kind of talking before we recorded, right? Is like that stigma of going back to school at a certain age where I was telling you how, I studied with someone who, when I went to Kenya for a summer and we did the study abroad program, there was someone in his mid 40s in my group. And it was just so cool to have such a variation of like
Mhm.
wisdom too, that you get to be a freshman, but you also get to bring in this wise experience into other people's lives and your own too, to really I wish sometimes I could go back to school as what I know now to realize, like, okay, how can I learn a little better? So, yeah,
Mhm.
kudos to you. I love it.
Thanks.
Any last thoughts as we wrap up?
Oh, this came to my mind as you were sharing that story. I think, you know, it's easy to be embarrassed when you start something new or you start over, but there's really nothing to be embarrassed about. Um, we all are on our own journey. We all have our own things going on, and we at the end of the day, we have to do what's best for us. And if that means starting over, taking an uncontroversial path, or
Mhm.
that's not the right word, I don't think.
Yeah, or
Unconventional.
yeah, unconventional or
Yeah.
taking a bridge job or something on the side to pursue
Yeah.
our dreams. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever you have to do, like I think that's noble and worthy. So nothing to
Yeah.
be ashamed of that. So,
No, especially too in like our generation. I mean, you're being 30, I'm 33, where we were kind of raised to almost have to perform, where it's like,
mhm,
okay, how can we stop performing and just be human and like
mhm,
also accept our lives as they are and embrace the journey and that
mhm.
not everything needs to be perfect that we see on Instagram or Facebook or, social media that there we are human and also have our journey. So I just want to say thank you again for taking the time for this conversation to highlight your journey and to show that like you're human and you're owning it and it's incredible.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot.
Thanks, Elijah.
Thanks for wandering and weaving with me today. If something stirred in you, let it. You don't need to rush to figure it out, just stay with it. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love if you'd share it, left a 5-star rating, or wrote a review. It helps the message ripple out to others who might need it, and it lets me know what's resonating with you too. If you're feeling the pull to go deeper, everything you need is waiting in the show notes. Until next time, stay with your rhythm, trust your timing, and keep coming home to you.